thank you for offering us the space. I think the one dream that connected us when we met a couple of years ago was I have an urgency for now because I had twins. Now it's 4. I didn't know it by then. But I realized I need a solution for now for my kids. And that's the same you said. The current education doesn't work. So I think human and purpose as its core. And me coming from the financial industry, I realized that SDG 4 has always been underfunded. This was urgent to focus more on human skills already a couple of years ago. And now with AI, when we see the horrible rise of mental health issues and kids suffering, and you see that depression rising, so, like loneliness rising, narcissism rising, everything, I started researching more and more, and the more I saw, I realized this is not only a concern for parents, this has become a systemic risk. So whenever someone comes back and says, these are nice to have skills, we realize, guys, there is a ripple effect. If we don't react in time, it's not only the 600 billion that, for example, Europe is investing in mental health, but we realize that, for example, I come from Venezuela, and mass manipulation was an issue with social media, etc. The reason I'm telling you is this society or this generation, not the millennials that is growing, is becoming a problem that they're facing with things like short-termism. They're just thinking short things. So no one will be investing in SDGs if we continue with this. This is people that are, if we don't teach them critical thinking, they're going to be manipulated, especially with a high risk of rising AI, social media, etc., which is increasing this risk. So we need to reshift the entire education system. So suddenly a lot of ventures and startups and great projects started approaching and said, we have a problem, we need capital, we need to be funded. And then you saw different ideas that were rising in different countries, and that's when you see the cost is gigantic. You have duplicated effort somewhere. We're not sharing know-how from one country to the other. You have governments working on one hand, schools in the other, foundations doing the other work instead of collaborating. And I had the pleasure, obviously, meeting people around the world. Now I'm with 2 hats. On one hand, we started Next Gen for Impact, and we said it's 2 issues that we have. The urgency is, it's not only that we're behind with education, like you well said, the World Economic Forum said it's about 70 to 80% of jobs that won't exist. So there's a mismatch in skills. But on the other hand, the mental health problem is coming largely as well because social media, AI is coming into the hands way too early, and we're not realizing the negative effect this has. So it's about protecting and empowering the next generation in a digital era. We can't deny it. And that's why I brought us together, because I had the pleasure to be involved now on the board of another foundation called We Share Foundation, which works very much with Europe, where we have on board here. And they have realized the impact and the leverage that you can achieve when you work collaboration, when you work and everybody uses their skills, their network, their know-how, and the credibility and the voice you get also at policy level is at another level. And given the urgency, and today for the ones that were at Human Change and saw the terrible situation we're facing for youth if we don't react now and join capital, this is a race against AI, technology, etc., as human beings that we can only win if we collaborate. So with that, we would love to open and have this as a roundtable format, but if there's anything out there that still wants to contribute, we will. Before that, I would love to introduce Salvatore from J Europe here. They have done an incredible work in setting this up very quickly, inviting really great people. Unfortunately, there's some of foundations that are already part of the alliance that will not be able to be here, but we're bringing their input to the table. But before we do that, I would like to keep this as a conversation and would like to ask you what you think the most, because we know the urgency, we know the numbers, so we're really trying to go pragmatic back into action. If you realize the situation, the mismatch we have right now, and with the experience you have had reaching millions of kids around the world, what do you think are the most important skills that should be on the agenda? And second, what is the most effective way to reach? And if an alliance could scale this even faster?
You have a lot of questions. The question leads to reflections. And if you really want to design the future, sometimes you need to look at the past. And while you were speaking, I was looking at 2 past. The first one was when the Davos was created, right? It was an intimate group of people, disconnected from the buzz out there, who wanted to have the time to question themselves and have those reflections. And I think this is what we are doing here in this moment. We get out of the buzz to take a little bit to reflect. Then looking even further, not 1970, I'm going back to 1919. When the founder of Junior Achievement, the organization I have the privilege to represent and lead in Europe, Thomas Volt, as an entrepreneur, he was creating AT&T, American Telegraph and Telecommunication. And he had, oh, I have a problem. I need to deploy telegraph. I cannot find entrepreneurs out there. The public education system is not really providing the skills for employees. 107 years ago. And today we're talking not anymore about telecommunication, but not anymore about the internet. We're talking about AI and blockchain and quantum and so on and so forth. And we still have the same education system. We still have the same problem. So what he did, Thomas Walt, he say, okay, I'll bring my people in the schools. The teacher might have the pedagogy. My people know how the business works. So we try to do a 360 degrees pedagogy and applications. So we don't teach. We provide learning experiences. Learning experiences to how many? This year alone, last school year, I'm sorry, 23 million children and youth in 115 countries. To become, first and foremost, have an entrepreneurial mindset. Will they become an entrepreneur? Probably not. Roberta Metsola, the president of the European Parliament, we trained when she was 16 years old. She didn't become an entrepreneur. Mark Cuban became an entrepreneur and went through our programs, and Christina Aguilera became a singer. But, you know, at the end of the day, they learn about resilience. They learn about to work with other people. They looked at, this is a problem, I want to get out there, right? I'm very glad to have here today Luwe Dagger, which is one of our alumni at JA, and Thomas Churchill, representing Euroclear, that Euroclear and Euroclear Foundation is supporting JA Europe to do this work with funding, expertise, volunteers, right, to go into the schools and train the young people to grow. Having said that, it's not easy. It's not easy because when everybody gets around the table, wants to put its own agenda on top of it, right? But if you really want to get, you need to give. And that's why we're putting a lot of energy with Angie, with the Alliance, to put our own expertise. And we know we are a piece of this puzzle, and we really invite many of you to join. The other issues that we are facing it. We start with kids at 6 years old. I tell you this little acronym to people, which is my son, I'm Italian, my wife is Spanish, so my son wanted to become a football player, of course, right? I mean, it's normal, right? Then we went through our programs, and in 2 months now he wants to become an entrepreneur. So that's fine, it's funny and so. But what really struck me is my daughter. At 6 years old, she barely wrote, so she was writing the letter to Santa Claus. I say, okay, what do you want? She say, I want a smartwatch. So what do you want a smartwatch? You didn't even know what the time is it, right? What do you want a smartwatch for? Because with the smartwatch, I can buy whatever I want.
Financial freedom.
This led to an article I published on Financial Times. Our kids do not understand the financial infrastructure that has it, the value of money at it. What she saw. She saw I go to the toy store, click, whatever you want, click, it works. Go to the food store, go to the clothing stores. So I say, why do I need a toy? If I have that toy, I can have everything I want, right? So while this toy is important, it's digital, it has the digital current behind it, it is important that they understand the value. And this is what we need to do as parents, as educators, transmit values first and foremost, and have them having this learning experiences.
Thank you very much. And with that being said, that's one of the important skills. So one thing we realize together on one hand is the entrepreneurial skills. But like you said very well, the education system having adapted massively, the big question here is obviously what are the skills that AI won't be able to replace? And second enough, if we are in a digital era, which we are, and that cannot be denied, what will be the human skills that a child will need to be able to manage this moment of speed, answer immediately, all this stress, all this rapid change, which you mentioned resilience, which is very important, the money mindset, but you also mentioned before collaboration. And one of the interesting things we're seeing today also in a panel is that because of the lack of human touch and more touch with tech and AI, etc., the young people are losing that capability to empathize, to collaborate, to connect with the other human being. And this, again, short-termism, etc., is making this a more narcissistic, selfish society, which cares less for the future. So the money mindset, and here I'll open up the round because funny enough, this brings very passionate discussions, and that's why some of you are here. So like I said, and I have to put on the table, there's two inputs of two members of the Alliance that are not here. Unfortunately, Margarita Dreyfus from Human Change, who's having the closing speech. And this is a beautiful location, but that's why she doesn't make it on time back and forth. But what she puts to the table is realizing after years sitting with researchers is we're losing the values of intergenerational communication, connection, and thereby also family values. That's super important because a child is not only raised by a school or by one parent, but it requires entire community. And this losing connections is something that unfortunately is going at a rapid speed. So it's that intergenerational connection and family values that she wants to bring to the table again, and the human at the center. And the other one, the founder of We Share Foundation, who I'm here for as well, and I'm very blessed to be on the board of, he's a serial entrepreneur and has dedicated himself the last few years to fund We Share Foundation by himself, now collaborating with very successful alliances that prove how it works when you said everybody puts in their pitch. They have the Youth Alliance, the Agri-Food Alliance, Women Entrepreneurship Alliance, and you have Lego Foundation, Microsoft, SAP. It's big corporates that all join together in one mission and prove that gigantic leverage that you can achieve with this an alliance. And his take on this is he realized entrepreneurs requires critical thinking and creativity. And this is one thing AI won't replace. So what he wants for the younger generation, the Youth Alliance is 21 plus, if I'm not mistaken. And he says kids at the center are in industrialized education where they're bombarded with one-way teaching. You have to learn this, and this. And kid by nature are like a blank canvas. These are his words. And what he has realized, if you give them the space to play, to be creative among themselves, amazing solutions for the world as well can arise. So that's his input in here. And the reason I laugh with money mindset, I believe in financial literacy, and I believe that you can teach to use capital for good. So when you teach a kid to invest and to save, you can also raise them by creating habits, taking advantage very early on of neuroplasticity. The earlier you start, the better. That from every dollar, or if you get $10, you might as well just give one away. And raise them with a mindset. The more you serve, the more you give, the more you get. And this is totally doable. So with this said, there is a way to combine money mindset and ripple mindset. But I would love to open up into actions here with the experts on the table and ask, what do you think it would take to speed up this transformation of the education around the world? Be it through schools, be it through single and supporting and funding initiatives or great new schooling systems. Because the one thing I agree, and I'll give it to Christoph briefly here, and that's why I'm laughing, is because when we shared the executive brief of the human curriculum that we were thinking about as a North Star for the Alliance, this is not about funding SDG 4 alone. It's not just education, but the skills that we think these kids that are suffering, that are going into depression, loneliness, etc., they need the most, which is emotional intelligence at its core as well, purpose, of course, collaboration, entrepreneurial skills, and financial literacy as well. When we look at this, I called it human curriculum, and he was like, you can't call it curriculum. And then he said, money mindset doesn't go with ripple mindset. And I said, no, that goes. I do agree on the curriculum word, but this is not about perfection. We have to act and collaborate together if we want to shift it. And capital together, we reach much more leverage. We said that. But this is one of the feedbacks that we need in this. This is a living framework. But whatever we do is going to be better than what they're seeing right now. So as long as we're here, that we know we all want to work for good, to use education for good, to empower these kids. And we're willing to discuss and have a steering committee of experts, which we have. We have a Harvard psychiatrist on board, we have pediatricians on board. It's amazing people that are willing to commit their time to live this. But we have to. And just as a last wake-up call, the ripple effect goes so far, we can't even imagine. Today I had an expert worldwide renowned for fertility, and she said that the horrible correlation we can see of mental health, especially among girls, like fertility issues are going up like this because of depression, anxiety, they lack of self-worth, etc., largely triggered by social media, but largely triggered by this epidemic of loneliness because we're not connecting anymore. And this is really, when we think about it, this is systemic risk, this is democratic, and I'll stop it here and pass over, this is really democratic resilience we're putting in question, especially human capital formation at its core. And if we get the next generation right, I think everything else follows. All other SDGs follow, but we need to focus on getting this right. So Christopher here, if you want, we try to keep the inputs at 1 minute, and feel free to collaborate if you have specific thoughts. Don't wait for questions. You started Learn Life, which is a very disruptive system. And one thing I really liked of what I went to see you as the idea of, I don't need to do it all myself. I don't need to call it Learn Life. And you're willing to illuminate, and you had a beautiful word that you called having lighthouses in different schools. So at its core, what do you think is completely unique, and why do you think this lighthouses would work? And of such an alliance, if this would work, what would be your contribution to it?
First of all, quick question into the group here. Does anybody know why we are from Homo sapiens and not Neanderthal?
Attachment, socialization.
Sorry, what?
The brain was a bit bigger, isn't it?
No, that's the Neanderthal. And they had bigger muscles. So that's the funny part, because the Homo sapiens were much more social. They were learning creatures, and they were creative. So I'm just referring, because we're speaking about skills here, that we can go millions of years backwards, and that is who we are. And now we're speaking about, just because there was an education system that over 160 years ago took these things out, we're now thinking this is kind of the new orange or whatever. But it's really, so what we started 10 years ago, we analyzed the entire world of learning innovation. We went around to the 100 most innovative schools just to find out that the whole idea of learning is something that we were always as humans. We just took it out of the system. That's why I also want to just say, let's not talk about education anymore, please. Because education is a beautiful word, but we really did something wrong with it. And that's the process that we did in the last 150 years. We are learning humans. And education goes up in the frontal part of our brain. It sits there for 2 weeks and it's gone. It was made for exams and tests, nothing else. We are learning in our main brain, because when we create, what happens? We create emotions. What happens when we create emotions? Our synapses are connecting. When our synapses are creating and connecting, we are learning forever. And that's what we have to do with our children. And anyone, by the way, because we all started to learn when we came out of school, and we get out into the world and we create our companies and whatever, because we are starting to create. So I just want to recognize, when we speak about this, we have to think about what learning is again. And at Learn Life, if you come, like you came beautifully like 6 months ago, no? And some other people from here around the room. So you'll see, actually, what I love about it is, well, a lot of people, we set out to create the School of the Future 8 years ago. And I'm very happy that we got a lot of recognition from 100 over the last couple of years for all the innovation that we did. But the most beautiful thing is, actually, people come, they walk around, they speak to our learners, and they almost start to cry, or they cry many times, and then they say, this is not only the School of the Future, but this is an entire new humanity, because they see learners that have a new mindset. Because what happens is, if you are allowed to learn on your own, with your own purpose, with your own learning direction, collaboration, all the different skills that you are mentioning, then suddenly you don't have a fixed mindset anymore, but you have a transformational mindset. And transformational mindsets will actually recreate the entire world in a completely new place. And that is, I think, the most important thing. So filing up, what I would like to express here is, let's get rid of exams and grades, because if we speak about well-being really in this world, then one of the biggest frontiers to this are the way that we are testing our children right now, with their new forms of assessment that are much more meaningful, that could replace this. And then well-being happens in the core. And the second thing is, let's think about life skills and basically life readiness. Life readiness as the ultimate inspiration, because then our children can be anything they want.
If we're going to make sure that we cope with what is going to be a challenging time in the coming years, let's be honest, we're going through a period of massive transformation in the world. AI is a big part of that. It's not the only part of that. And if you look at the research, I think the Edelman Trust Barometer feels appropriate to mention in this room, as it's the House of Trust. They call out some concerns about rising inequalities and that social media, the way that we consume information, is leading us to be much more insular in society. We care about those issues. It's important for all of our future, for our kids, also for long term from a financial perspective. We also want to have economic growth. We think that is good for people. We want to see people rise out of inequality. So we set up a corporate foundation last year, which we're very proud of. We've decided to give a significant amount of money each year. A long-term commitment of 1% of the company's profits goes into that foundation, and will continue to be kind of a social dividend from the company towards society. And we looking to focus that on how we can really help the underserved in the community. And we think that education, including financial literacy, plays a big part in that. So that's why we've actually been partnering with Junior Achievement for, it must be 11 years now, because it's been about a year since I talked about the decade. So it must be about 11 years, but we're now moving that onto a new level of strategic partnership, really helping to focus on that underserved community. And I want to thank Salvatore and the team for the way that they also are looking at real actions. We have to move to action and get these kids together, get them on projects, and that's what you guys do such a great job of. So thank you very much, and I really encourage you to continue with that work.
Because Salvatore was explaining, this is super important. So on the side, I come from the finance industry, and I partner with a very big family office in Switzerland. And one of the reasons I joined is because I thought they were very committed to society. And they said 1% of the salary, and we match, is always contributed to certain foundations. Unfortunately, they took that back, and I'm leaving that company this year. One of the reasons is because they don't walk what they promise. And anyway, I think if we would manage to set this as an example and get companies, family office, etc., to say 1% to be committed for good, for a social cause. I would love you to share this story more often, and I hope we can invite you to share this more often, because this is so easy to do.
I'm more than happy to do that. And I would say there's not just money. It's, our chairman says it's your time, your talent, and your treasure. They're the resources that you have as a corporation that you can look to use for good. And so we're happy to contribute all three of those, including my time, to share that message.
Thank you so much. Thank you for that. Listen, everybody, please welcome to follow the example. Taking the round, I'm trying to keep it shorter. We also have someone here that comes from finance and tech industry and has dedicated, I don't know how many years now of his life to grow himself as a human being, but is trying to come back and give back to society. For the ones who don't know him, he's so much dedicated. His company's called Wisdom Health, and you can tell it to yourself. Tell it yourself afterwards. He did a gathering already at the initiating of the World Economic Forum. Tried to bring, I think you're bringing Richard Gere as well to the talk, and saying the importance of aligning more from a heart perspective and doing everything more heart aligned instead of this ego-driven wanting money. So the way you're aligned from a spiritual way is super important. And one of the conversations we had that connected us was when we spoke about how do we take advantage of the next generation being raised with these skills. because trying to hammer kids that won't go through a regular education system and losing that neuroplasticity window they have to create strong habits early on and then suddenly wait until they're burned out to train them into having this healthy habits ends up being much more costly for the entire economy. So what would your contribution be, Alvaro, and what would you want to see in education, not in the curriculum, but in the framework, in the learning experiences that our kids have?
Well, thank you so much, Angelica, for this invitation, and thank you, Stefan, for hosting as well, and everybody joining this conversation. I think it's very important because education is essential for everybody, not only for kids. And we have to understand, tomorrow's program that Richard Gere will participate is about wisdom leadership and understanding how to create causes of benefit for society and the planet. So all the things that everybody is doing is amazing, but you need some discernment, like clarity in your mind to understand clearly what are the benefits of what you're doing. And this is called wisdom. And this wisdom, this self-knowledge, the essence is compassion. If it is not from the heart to benefit others, you're only inflating your own ego. It's as simple as that. So you really need to check yourself. Am I really empowering myself to benefit others? Like, you have to check your mental state. It's crucial. So these kids, is actually the good news. This is innate quality of everybody. We all have a loving heart. We all love our families. We all love our countries, our, business partners. And we all have this potential, to develop. So it's something that is innate. For kids, the good news is more innate. We adults, we are a little bit more tight. Right now it's more difficult for us, but we have the same potential. So anyway, if you want to change the system, you have to change your own mind. There is no other way, Like body and speech follow your mind. It's kind of like followers, It's like you are the boss, your mind. And, in some traditions, mind is not only here, mind is here. Is in your heart. Actually, this is like the office. It's the executive brain that is holding operations you need for daily functioning. So they need to work together. Thank you so much.
Before I continue with someone that was brought to me together by Stefan, thank you. So meaningful connections. If there's one thing you're amazing at is making connections coming from the heart. And I'm really grateful for that. And I really think lots of these things wouldn't be happening if you wouldn't have pushed me into that. You know very well was very hard last year for me, and yet you pulled me on when the topic of education on and have helped me to transfer pain into purpose. And I don't want to get too emotional about it, but I'm really thankful for that. And you brought me into LASE. LASE, I think what you're doing is wonderful. You have dedicated yourself to education for many, many years. If you look at the alliance that we have right now, we have some funding partners. We have J Europe with an amazing network on the ground to roll it out. We have We Share Forward Foundation with an incredible operational experience, managing large capital fund philanthropic capital to deploy and vet, etc. What do you think something like 100 organization could bring to the table with your experience?
Thank you, Angelica, and blessed to be here with all of you. Maybe a little bit of the background. So I have been working in education since I was a student activist in early 2000. And for me, the driving force is what is the youth future orientation. We see sometimes that there are two kids, one with a similar kind of competencies and capabilities, and one of them see a world full of possibilities and another one see none. And through the work at 100, what we do, we every year select 100 education innovations around the world, which we see impactful and scalable. And these innovations are submitted to us by the founders. So we also tend to then see what are the trends of education sector. And at the moment, we are seeing a lot of solutions, of course, which are using AI, but also a lot of solutions which are talking about social emotional learning, self-regulation, communication skills, and how to be a better citizen, a global citizen in this world with a lot of complexities. And through the work that we do at 100, we see that at the moment there is a gap in the sector. We see that we have a lot of smaller organizations, family offices, foundations, which are supporting something very close to them. They might be building a new sports hall for the school. They might be supporting some of the programs in their own neighborhood, or where they manufacturing things. And then at the same time, we see that there are big foundations which are giving big pledges, like Lego Foundation giving 50 million to Prague last week. Fantastic that they're getting those resources. But then in the middle, we see that we don't have enough acceleration grants. We don't have enough capacity building for these organizations. And what we should see through us when somebody, what we see through us is that the world of education is transformed through non-profit organizations. 70% of the organizations we have in our database from global south countries are NGOs or social enterprises. There ain't often lucrative financial opportunities in those education markets, so you have to have other kind of vehicles. And the key is that how we are in a sustainable way able to provide resourcing for these organizations. And that's what we are doing through our 100 Foundation. We hope to have thematic and regional funding pools so that we can build these organizations to be capable to receive those big pledges from bigger organizations. And what I see is very much important that we are having these collaborative efforts in the sector. We organized the Education House here on Davos on Tuesday. Worldwide, together with Europe, Africa, and American organizations were part of it. We did it together with Teach for All. So this is a team sport. You cannot do this alone. We have to do collaboration, and through that collaboration, we can also then work with the fantastic organizations like Learn Life.
Thank you so much. Which I think with you at the forefront, vetting and looking for new projects is exactly what we need. To explain briefly the We Share Forward model, the foundation will work with, and then I'll give it back to you, Joel, just so you start preparing your feedback here is the dream of the founder. He has founded a lot of students that have no resources, and then they start committing and giving back to society once they're able to produce. And he wanted this model within the, let's say, philanthropic capital to make this a more sustainable model. So basically all the social entrepreneurship or project, et cetera, they invest in, there's a certain commitment, be it paying back once they break even. So it's not breaking down the investor, but it's actually once they're capable to start paying back. And this is beautiful because it makes the model not only impacting in the topic they're investing in, but you're already impacting and making more sustainable the future generations that will be needing this capital. So this is what We Share Forward does.
We're currently doing with We Share Forward and JA in Georgia, in Moldova, in Ukraine. So in Ukraine, with all that's happening, we've invested into young entrepreneur, social entrepreneur. We're already investing into, there are 45 of those social entrepreneurs who are already supporting others with all the challenges that they're having. Right?
So, and it's beautiful mindset because if you think of it, you're supporting an entrepreneur, but you're teaching them not only money and entrepreneurial skills, but telling them how to give back to society again. So they learn, they will get, but they give back. And this is the whole mindset, ripple mindset we want to encourage. Jolte, very briefly to you, you came specially also for this roundtable. I'm super grateful for that. You're highly recommended by the entire We Share Forward team. I have not had the pleasure to work with you personally, but I would love you to give your contribution to your experience, how this collaboration could work, what you have seen, what is it you want to put on the table for us?
Learning in the end is about a deeply human experience of acting and reflecting. What happens if I do this? A child who puts everything in his mouth is doing exactly that, acting and reflecting. What I'm passionate about is to turn systems into a learning system so we can act and reflect. Let me make this very concrete. Corona, schools locked down. Everybody was sort of thinking this is going to have impact on the kids, but nobody knew what happened. We were the first one to measure very specifically what was the impact of closing down schools for about half a year and report that to the government and the scientific community, which was leading to a publication together with Oxford in one of the best American journals, PNAS, which taught the world a major thing. If you lock down the country for COVID, that can have a rationale. But know that that also has an impact on kids because they didn't progress in the learning as everybody had hoped to. So after that publication, governments around the world thought a second or a third time if they would sacrifice the kids in a pandemic like this. In the end, this is acting. policy acting and reflecting. What happens if we do that? So my passion is to bring this sort of systemic impact measurement and make it concrete at every level. For 10 years, I've been helping teachers to measure the impact of their teaching, to help school principals to measure the impact of their school policy, and to help ministers of education to make tangible what's the impact of what they do. So we would love to help impact investors, philanthropists to also not just act, but see what happens if they act the way they think it's good to do. And there's one specific edge that's really important to me. We're all addicted to numbers. We talk about states in terms of GDP, while we know there's a lot more than GDP in a state. We talk about kids in terms of the grades they get for a test, because it's easy to measure. How about we learn finding other ways of bringing evidence that give you that reflection, rather than just marks and notes and tests and all things that are easily measurable. So we are really trying to improve methodologies to make impact measurable in quantifiable but also qualitative ways. And I love to help the We Share Forward Foundation and this whole initiative to do that same thing from the Mirror Foundation, acting, reflecting, mirror, and we love to bring that contribution to the table. Thanks a lot for this great initiative. Thank you.
This was not prepared, but I'm taking it already because so a couple of years ago, since we are in 115 countries, we went and sit with the Ministry of Education of Albania. We love what you guys do in different schools. You are training young entrepreneurs with this entrepreneurial mindset. We want to expand. And I told him, do you want to expand or do you want to make a significant difference? From that one, our excellent, great team that we have in Albania, they have been able to enter into educational reform. So today, it is obligatory in the curricula to have an entrepreneurial experience. For the past 2 years, every year, we have 300,000, let me repeat this, 300,000 young people, the full population, 16 years old, going to an entrepreneurial experience, even if they're studying the Homos of Neanderthal and the Homo sapiens, yes, and Latins and Greek, but they also have to have an entrepreneurial experience. What I'm interested to with you is how in 10 years Albania is gonna change as a country because everybody has learned that entrepreneurial experience at school. So we should look at that.
Challenge accepted.
Great. So 300,000 people there in Albania waiting, a part of the 23 million. Big numbers, big number, big number. One, Love. Love came from Sweden and is one of our alumni. What about alumni? Alumni because he also gave back. He participated in the board of the alumni of JA with other great people. Maybe you can tell us a little bit more of his experience and how do you see, given being a youth still, and how do you see the educational system working today?
Yeah, for sure. Thank you so much, Sal, for inviting me here, Angie as well, and of course Stefan for hosting this. So I will tell you a little bit about my story of getting into this sort of NGO that I'm now running. But it all started with the JA experience. So JA, for those who don't know, run these programs where you, as a student, can try out to have a company and learn the entrepreneurial mindset. And I think it's all about the mindset that makes it so important. Because what you're actually taught to do is that you can create your own future. And that is what we want to give to everyone. The education system right now, I think it was well said that it's not about education, it's about learning. And the education system is so focused on knowing specific facts and following the system and being systematic about it, and not about actually learning and feeling what is my purpose, what I want to do and change in the world. So I did the JA program and I found also not only the mindset, but a lot of friends from the same program having the same ideas and mindset about the world. So what do you do after that? Well, obviously you create something and you want to spread this even more. So now I'm running something called Hack for Earth, where we do actually very similar things as JA, but our tool for this is not to create another student program, another student company. we create hackathons. And we teach people that you can, in a very short amount of time, create a new solution to create impact. So Hack for Earth is doing hackathons only on impact. So we're based completely on the SDGs, and we give people 72 hours to form a team, get to know each other, and then create a solution on one of the SDGs. And then, of course, we don't leave it there. We have an acceleration program where we help them for 6 months to make this into a real company. But it's all about bringing that entrepreneurial mindset so that they also feel that they can create something of their own. This started out actually in Sweden. I'm from Sweden, Stockholm, as a government project. So it was originally Hack for Sweden. Really cool, I must say, of my government to come up with this idea. And then they hired us to make it come true. And then the COVID came and we did another hackathon to how to solve the COVID crisis in Sweden. And then, after the COVID, there came the financial recession and maybe the budgets were cut. And we were sitting there, the team of the previous Hack for Sweden, thinking, what should we do now? And coming from, fortunate to come from Sweden, which is a very developed country, we were thinking that actually these tools that we have developed, they should not only be for Sweden. We have to take this to even more required areas, the global south, and make it Hack for Earth instead. So that's what we do now. We do these hackathons globally. We have had participants from 125 countries, 25,000 youth now in the past 4 years that we have been around. And I think it really fuels me so much to give back to this and to see all of these young people from everywhere having that tick in their mindset where they're like, oh, I had these hardships, but I can change them. That's what really is the important things for me.
So thank you so much for your last contribution and in the importance to also listen to youth. I think that's super important. The roundtable we had on Tuesday, forgot the position from the UN as well, and there was one person who wanted to come, didn't make it, also young. It's so important when he mentioned one thing, they're looking for purpose and being able to pursue their passion and being able to learn. And that sparked something in me that we have to, instead of to kill that spark that they have by nature. A kid wants to learn, he's curious, and we're killing it. I think this is something that needs to be at the core as well. But to close around and get the other ones that were here briefly in, Anna, you're with Teach for All, really cool lady from Barcelona. That's how we connected. I love that the Spanish immediately connects. Before I asked you something, and it really touched me because I feel aligned with it. So if you could say, I am in, and I'm going to make and help to frame the framework, not the curriculum. See, we're adapting the words here. We're already adapting. The framework that the kids need to thrive as a human being, to be fulfilled, to help them find their purpose and pursue them without grades. What would it be in your experience of what it's seen? What is it you would change? What type of topics, pillars, module would you want to see in such a human framework?
If we need to reshape the purpose of education and create this new framework, who's going to do it? Like, are we sending the most promising leaders in the education sector, or are we sending them to, the big consultancies, the most lucrative jobs? And that's what we do at Teach for All. Like, we recruit very aggressively the young generation, the young promising leaders in any country. We're in more than 60 countries. To decline offers from the McKinseys and the Goldman Sachs, as much as I have friends working for that, and to say like, hey, why don't you come? Why don't you teach for 2 years in the most marginalized communities with the most underserved kids? And then during these 2 years, we're going to support you to become leaders in education. And what we're seeing is that 80% of them, they never leave the job. They don't go back to consulting or to finance. They stay in education. They are so committed. It shifts their mindset. So they decide like, yeah, I'm going to become a social entrepreneur, or I'm going to become the minister of education or the school principal or the teacher, and I'm going to commit to education. I'm going to do this. I'm going to shift the purpose of education. And that's what we're seeing. Like when we look around the 60 plus countries in where we are, and we look where are the most transformational classrooms for kids, what we're seeing is that they are those that don't teach only for numeracy and literacy. They need to know how to do science. But it's where these most promising young leaders that are change makers in education, they teach for other competencies. And we've talked a lot about agency, awareness, critical thinking, creativity, collaboration. And I also have to say that I agree with Alvaro. It's a bit cheesy sometimes to talk about love and compassion, but they really bring the love and the trust between the teacher, the families, and the students. And that's very important, because we were talking the other day at the Education House, like, how do we leverage AI in education to change this purpose? And I think like AI is not gonna substitute this trust that we need to create in schools with teachers, with students, this love. So yeah, we need to make sure that we shift the framework or the curriculum or whatever we want to call it. We bring the most promising talent in the education sector, and then we leverage AI in the right way. Thank you.
And almost to close and wrap it up, Yolita, you mentioned the importance of numbers. I mean, coming from the finance industry, they always want to see what's the ROI, where's my return? And to be honest, when you really look, there's incredible research already from, I believe it was Columbia University and Yale that did a massive research in terms of the effect of social emotional learning. And they did it around 500,000 kids almost, and they saw that for every dollar invested, there's $11 return. Because when you look at the cost that this is causing of dropouts, bullying, therapy requires, etc., it's massive. The problem is we're focusing too much on investing in mental health because it's the urgency, but we're not realizing we have to go one step ahead into prevention. And the prevention largely, if we start with the ball, is it the parents' fault? Is it the education? This is such an urgent matter. And then I'm closing with you, but you have to make it short into 1 minute before I completely close around. Is that we are facing disruptive, like you, Tom, as you mentioned so well. This is an era we don't know what it is. My education system was more similar to probably my great-grandmother's than what it is to my kids, to the world they're facing. I don't know what type of jobs I'm preparing them for. And I was discussing the other day with some friends, if I would be in an airplane about to crash, I would worry that there's no one there to give the skills that my kids need. I trust my husband, he's wonderful, yes, but, big but. I think these emotional intelligence skills, the purpose we're talking about, collaboration, should also be a duty of governments forcing schools to teach these. Because we're talking about escalating and horrible cascading effects for the entire society and economy if we don't react and raise and shape the future change makers that we need today. We're already behind. AI and AI and social media and tech, I mean, you look at TikTok adapts hourly. ChatGPT, I think, grew to, 100 million users in like 2 months. Not even if we act together, we're faster than them, but that's our only chance. And with that, I introduced just briefly Dr. Allison. I met you and I really loved what you're doing in the UAE. You can briefly say it and see the risk of what you're seeing if we don't control the whole side of too much tech too early on, and why this should be included as a topic of education.
So many things to address there. We have very little time. I have an Uber coming because I have to get a train. However, less tech, minimal tech. So going back to what Christoph said is what is optimal human development? It happens through socialization, not socializing with a chatbot, socializing with humans. From an evolutionary psychology perspective, the developing mind grows best through a secure attachment with a parent or two parents and growing up in an intergenerational community. I mean, this whole single family home thing that we grow up in is counterintuitive to the way children are supposed to grow. We're supposed to grow in villages. We're supposed to be taught by the little kids are supposed to be taught not just by the grown-ups, but by the older kids. And we have school systems where it's one teacher and a group of kids who are all the same age staring at computers all day. It's completely counterintuitive to what is best for the developing child, the developing mind, and the developing body. So what I hope we can do going forward is really start to advocate for getting tech out of classrooms unless it's a very narrow use case, right? Where it is enhancing thinking, not replacing it. Because what we're also seeing now is psychophantic AI causing children to have psychotic episodes. Psychophantic AI befriends a child, then teaches the child how to commit suicide. We have case studies of this. and they've been replicated replicated is a terrible way to say this, but this is happening all over the world now. In Dubai,
wait 10 more years for more data and have more suicides and more depression to react.
thank you. No, this is happening now. So let's go back to returning childhood to children, play-based childhood, in real life childhood, with kids running around everywhere and giving them agency. So this is why I love what you're doing. Enabling kids to make the choices that they want to make about their education, not us as adults dumping it on them and mandating them to do things that are completely irrelevant for them.
A big thank you again, Stefan. You know, when I started Next Gen for Impact, I went from wanting to change it myself to realizing there are wonderful ideas out there and they need capital. And I thought, how do I leverage my strength, my network to help capital? And the more I realized that, more people started asking for capital. So I was like, we need collaboration on this. So thank you for being on the board of Next Gen for Impact and believing in me and pushing me forward during hard times and making this happen. I don't think I would be sitting here with you if you wouldn't have believed in me. I'm thankful for everybody sitting here at the table and really dream forward. This is what we're doing as Next Gen for Impact. The dream was to create the ecosystem and avoid everybody working in silos. And not only funders, like you said, fund the ones that need it, but bring the government on the table. We have people in the National Parliament in Switzerland on the board. We have, Harvard psychologists on board. We have people that really across industries that realize we have to act now together, and this is the only way. We need to shape and protect this generation because those are the leaders of tomorrow. Regardless if you have kids or not, these are the ones that will be taking the decisions, not the millennials, it's the ones that are coming, that are being shaped by AI if we don't react. So with that, a big thank you. We hope we brought some of you into action. If you want, reach out. And Salva, I'm going to give you the word one more time.
Yes. Well, first of all, we saw in Davos multi-billion dollars companies spending millions in sessions where you had 5 speakers and 3 people in the audience. We're seeing here a full house of people in a session that has been not sponsored, in a session that when Angie called me was what? 10 days ago? 9? Right? Something like this. Because Stefan said, okay, we need to do that. So we share forward, not even being here, but remotely say, yes, we need to do it. And all of you committing time out of the bus to come here and reflect.
And flying from all over. So
I'm flying from all over to reflect. And I started with, if you want to design the future, look at your past. So I want you to live looking at when you were 16 years old. Look at your past and think, what is the world that you imagine? What is the world that you are now? What is the world that you would like to be for your kids when they're 16 years old? Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.